Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Playing with someone's emotions is cruel and heartless, especially when that person loves you unconditionally and places their full trust in you. In such situations, disappointment and resentment might actually be the least damaging outcomes. One of the most common examples of this kind of manipulation is breadcrumbing, a behavior where someone gives another person just enough attention to keep them interested. It's all about subtle flirtation, compliments, and leading someone on, all while having no real intentions behind those actions. It's a calculated form of deception, where the victim is left clinging to false hope. The story of a young American woman named Erin Corwin shook the entire nation in 2014 due to its sheer brutality and chilling cold-bloodedness. Erin, who was pregnant at the time, was lured into a deadly trap by someone she deeply trusted, someone she loved and envisioned a future with. What makes this crime even more disturbing is how meticulously it was planned. Erin had no idea she was walking straight into danger. The person she cared for masked his intentions so well that Erin never suspected the betrayal waiting for her. If everything had gone according to the perpetrator's plan, this case might have remained unsolved, but fate seemed to intervene. Key pieces of evidence, clear, undeniable proof, managed to survive, ensuring that the truth would eventually come to light. Erin Agnes Corwin, née Kampfer, was born on July 15, 1994, in the small town of Hope Bridges, Tennessee. She was the youngest of 3 siblings and the only daughter in a modest, middle-class family. Growing up alongside her 2 older brothers, Erin was always surrounded by care and protection. They looked out for her, guiding her through life's ups and downs. From an early age, Erin stood out for her kind, gentle nature. She was quiet, friendly, and did well in school. Her dream was to one day become a veterinarian. At just 14, she started volunteering at a local animal shelter, dedicating her time to helping abandoned and stray animals. However, Erin had a tender heart, and seeing animals suffer, or knowing they couldn't be saved, took an emotional toll on her. It eventually led her to abandon her plans of pursuing a medical career. Alongside her brothers, Erin took up horseback riding at a nearby equestrian club. She wasn't just passionate about it, she was talented. Over the years, she competed in various events, earning awards and recognition for her skills. It was at this very riding club that 12-year-old Erin met Jonathan Corwin, a boy who would later become one of the most important people in her life. Jonathan was just a year older than Erin, and like her, was born and raised in Hope Bridges. The two bonded quickly over shared interests, spending hours together at the stables. What started as a simple friendship gradually deepened as they grew older, evolving into a romantic relationship during their teenage years. On Erin's 16th birthday, Jonathan gave her a delicate ring, something that looked a lot like a promise ring, and formally asked her parents for permission to date their daughter. Erin's parents had known Jonathan for years and thought highly of him. They believed their daughter was in good hands and gladly gave their blessing. From that moment on, Erin and Jonathan were officially a couple. Jonathan had long dreamed of joining the military. He was determined and focused on that goal, but leaving Erin behind wasn't something he was willing to do. After graduating high school, he delayed enlisting for a year so Erin could finish school and they could move forward together. In 2012, the couple tied the knot in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family. Jonathan was 19 at the time, and Erin had just turned 18. Not long after the wedding, Jonathan signed a military contract and officially began his service. He was stationed at the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center in 29 Palms, California, a remote base in the heart of the desert. Erin packed up her life in Tennessee and followed him west, eager to start their new life together. But nothing could have prepared her for what life on a military base would truly be like. Isolated in a barren landscape, the days felt long and repetitive. Erin had put her own plans, like college and a career, on hold to support Jonathan. But the reality of military life was far tougher than she'd imagined. Still, Erin was resilient. She made the best of the situation, reaching out to neighbors and quickly building connections within the community. She adapted, found small joys in everyday moments, and stayed in close contact with her family. She often called her mom, sharing stories about her new life in California, her marriage, and the challenges and highlights of being a military spouse. Living next door to the Corwins were two other young families, Christopher Lee and his wife Nicole, along with their 3-year-old daughter Liberty, and the couple Connor and Aislinn Malaki. These were the neighbors Erin and Jonathan grew closest to, forming strong bonds that quickly turned into meaningful friendships. Erin was doing her best to adjust to her new life, focusing on making their house feel like a real home, warm, cozy, and welcoming. While the men were away on duty, Erin spent time with her neighbors. They often visited each other, helped out with daily chores, and had heartfelt conversations. Of all her new friends, Erin became especially close with Aislinn. She saw her not just as a neighbor, but as a confidant, someone she could truly open up to about her worries, dreams, and personal struggles. Weekends were often spent together as a group. The three families would have backyard barbecues, play tennis or video games, or gather around the TV for movie marathons. Little Liberty was the heart of these gatherings. Being the only young one around, she got plenty of attention, always spoiled with sweet treats and surrounded by adults eager to make sure she never felt left out. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect suburban life, things between Erin and Jonathan were slowly starting to unravel. To be fair, neither of them had been fully prepared for the realities of marriage. They'd tied the knot when they were barely more than teenagers, still figuring out life themselves. And now, living in an isolated desert town, the pressure of daily responsibilities was taking its toll. One of the biggest challenges they faced was financial strain. Money was tight, so tight that they often had to cut corners just to cover essentials, leaving little room for anything extra. The stress of constantly budgeting and the lack of stability only deepened the cracks forming in their relationship. They also started noticing little flaws in each other, things that, during the honeymoon phase, had been easy to overlook. Being young and inexperienced, they struggled to communicate properly, often letting small disagreements spiral into bigger conflicts. Arguments became more frequent, slowly chipping away at the love that once held them together. In the spring of 2013, Erin discovered she was pregnant. Despite the growing tension in their marriage, this news filled both Erin and Jonathan with hope and happiness. All their worries seemed to fade into the background as they focused on the excitement of welcoming a new life. Erin couldn't wait to share the news. She called her parents, who were thrilled at the idea of becoming grandparents, and she even posted about it on social media, letting friends and extended family in on the happy moment. For Erin, there was no doubt about who would be the godmother. She chose Aislinn without hesitation. Their friendship had become one of the brightest parts of Erin's life, and she wanted her closest friend to have a special role in her child's future. During those first few months, Erin was glowing with excitement. She poured her energy into planning and dreaming about the life ahead. But in early June, when she was just 3 months along, everything changed. Erin suffered a miscarriage, a devastating loss that left her emotionally shattered. The grief was overwhelming. Erin sank into a deep depression, struggling to cope with the pain of losing her pregnancy. But what made it even harder was that everyone around her knew she had been expecting. Friends and family kept calling, eager to offer congratulations and check in on her health, each call forcing Erin to relive the heartbreak as she explained the tragedy over and over again. The weight of that loss lingered, leaving emotional scars that Erin carried with her in the months that followed. For Erin and Jonathan, who had been eagerly preparing to become parents, the miscarriage was a devastating blow that deeply shook their already fragile relationship. They began to drift apart again, each coping with the loss in their own way. Jonathan struggled to find the right words to comfort his wife, while Erin withdrew into herself, often saying she felt like she had lost all sense of purpose. In her darkest moments, Erin unexpectedly found comfort in Christopher Lee, their neighbor. Christopher was 6 years older than Erin and seemed, in her eyes, more mature than Jonathan. He had a natural charm that made him the life of any gathering, easily captivating people with his stories and light-hearted humor. But beneath that outgoing personality hid a deep, long-standing depression, rooted in emotional scars he rarely let anyone see. Christopher often made offhand jokes about mortality, even hinting that one day he might choose to leave this world on his own terms. Most people brushed off these comments as dark humor, but Erin sensed there was real pain behind his words. Their conversations became more frequent and more personal as they found solace in sharing their inner struggles. The connection between them grew stronger, though both tried to maintain boundaries, at least at first. One evening, during one of their more intense talks, Christopher confided something deeply troubling. He admitted that during moments of extreme despair, he would play a dangerous game, loading a single round into his revolver, spinning the cylinder and pulling the trigger while pointing it at his own head. It was a reckless act he kept hidden from everyone, including his wife. Erin was the only person he had ever trusted enough to tell. As time went on, Erin and Christopher grew inseparable. They shared their deepest fears, frustrations, and secrets, and it wasn't long before they both realized that their marriages weren't as perfect as they appeared to outsiders. Christopher opened up about how he had married young, become a father early on, and over time, his feelings for his wife had faded. Erin, too, admitted that the love she once felt for Jonathan was now clouded by distance and disappointment. In Christopher, she felt understood in a way she hadn't in a long time. In February 2014, the Corwins invited Christopher and his wife Nicole over for a casual evening of watching Game of Thrones. Erin wasn't particularly a fan of the show. She found it too violent, so after a while, she excused herself and went into another room to scroll through social media. Not long after, Christopher followed. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Nicole stayed in the living room, continuing the show. Alone together, Erin and Christopher talked for a bit, until an awkward silence filled the room. Then, without warning, Christopher leaned in and kissed her. Erin didn't pull away. She kissed him back. In that moment, all the tension between them surfaced, and they found themselves wrapped in each other's arms, forgetting everything else around them. That kiss was the line they had both promised not to cross, but now that it was broken, there was no going back. The next day, they arranged to meet in a secluded spot where they became physically intimate for the first time. After that, their secret meetings became regular, and the initial caution that had kept them in check faded away completely. Christopher confided in Erin that he no longer loved his wife and was only staying in the marriage for the sake of his daughter, Liberty. He claimed he didn't have the courage to leave but promised that if he ever did, he would fight for custody. He painted Erin a picture of a future where they could be together and raise Liberty as a family. Erin believed him wholeheartedly. She had fallen for him deeply and was convinced their connection was real. In March 2014, a few months into Erin and Christopher's intense secret affair, Aislinn accidentally witnessed something that left her stunned. From her window, she saw Erin and Christopher passionately kissing. Shocked and deeply hurt by what she had just seen, Aislinn's entire perception of Erin shifted. Though furious, she chose not to expose her friend, at least not right away. Instead, she confronted Erin directly, urging her to end the affair before it spiraled any further out of control. Erin was overwhelmed with shame. She broke down in tears, begging Aislinn not to tell anyone. Aislinn reluctantly agreed, but the tension was now unbearable. It felt like the truth was hanging by a thread, ready to snap at any moment. Despite the growing risk of being exposed, Erin and Christopher couldn't bring themselves to stop. They were intoxicated by the thrill and the emotional connection. Erin had grown especially attached to Christopher's daughter, Liberty, and often fantasized about raising her alongside Christopher as a family. But soon, Nicole, Christopher's wife, began sensing that something was off. Her husband had grown distant, colder, and their physical relationship had all but faded. One evening in early June, while Christopher was showering, Nicole gave in to her suspicions. She quietly grabbed his phone and scrolled through his messages. Her worst fears were confirmed. She found explicit texts between Christopher and Aaron. The revelation was like a punch to the gut. Nicole was furious. The betrayal was made even worse by the fact that the other woman was someone she had considered a friend. Consumed by rage, she confronted Christopher, threatening divorce and vowing he'd never see Liberty again. But she wasn't done. Still fuming, Nicole stormed over to the Corwins' apartment and, without holding back, told Jonathan everything about his wife's affair. In front of them both, she slapped Aaron across the face and warned her never to go near Christopher again. Jonathan was crushed. A storm of emotions, shame, heartbreak, anger, and pure disbelief hit him all at once. It took him some time to process everything, but when he and Aaron finally sat down to talk, they made a surprising decision. Despite everything, they would try to salvage their marriage. Christopher, on the other hand, had to fight hard to win back Nicole's trust. She was on the brink of leaving him, and he knew that if she went through with it, he could lose Liberty forever. To prevent that, he promised to cut all ties with Aaron. For a while, it seemed like both couples were attempting to patch things up. But old habits die hard. It wasn't long before Aaron and Christopher slipped back into their affair. This time, however, they were far more cautious, keeping their meetings secret and their conversations coded. Yet, no amount of secrecy could prepare them for what came next. Not long after the scandal, Christopher decided to leave military service and move with Nicole and Liberty to Alaska for a fresh start. It was around this time that Aaron discovered she was pregnant again. Almost immediately, she suspected that Christopher was the father. Despite everything, Aaron was still in love with him and held on to the hope that they could eventually be together. When she told Christopher about the pregnancy, he was stunned. This was the last thing he expected or wanted. Nicole had barely forgiven him for the affair, and news of Aaron's pregnancy would have completely destroyed whatever was left of his marriage. The harsh reality was that Christopher had never seriously planned to leave Nicole. For him, the affair had been more about passion than commitment. Aaron, however, still believed in the future she had imagined. Determined to be honest, she confessed everything to Jonathan, including the pregnancy. But Jonathan's reaction was unexpected. Instead of exploding in anger, he calmly told her that he forgave her and was willing to raise the baby as his own, even if it wasn't biologically his. But Aaron had made up her mind. She wanted to be with Christopher. She told her parents about the pregnancy, but kept the more complicated details to herself, deciding that such things were better discussed face-to-face, not over the phone. Meanwhile, she planned to have one final conversation with Christopher, still holding on to the hope that he would change his mind, leave Nicole, and finally commit to the future Aaron had been dreaming of, raising Liberty and their unborn child together. On June 29th, Jonathan called the police to report that his 19-year-old pregnant wife, Erin, had gone out for a walk the previous afternoon and never returned home. The day before, Erin had spoken with her mother over the phone, making plans for her upcoming visit. Erin wanted to explore the hiking trails at nearby Joshua Tree National Park ahead of time, hoping to take her mother there during her stay. It was a Saturday, and Erin told Jonathan she'd be back by the evening. She insisted he didn't need to come with her, knowing he was exhausted. Trusting her judgment, Jonathan stayed home and eventually fell asleep. When he woke up the next morning and realized Erin still hadn't returned, panic set in. He searched the entire military housing area but found no trace of her or their car. Fearing something terrible had happened and that time was critical, he finally called the police. Erin's phone went straight to voicemail, highly unusual for her. Jonathan told the responding officers that while their marriage had faced its fair share of challenges recently, Erin would never just disappear without letting someone know. His honesty about their rocky relationship immediately raised red flags for investigators who now viewed him as the primary suspect. Detectives found his account suspicious. Why would he let his pregnant wife go hiking alone? Why hadn't he reported her missing sooner instead of wasting precious time looking for her himself? These questions placed Jonathan under heavy scrutiny. However, the initial theory remained simple. Aaron might have gotten lost in the vast wilderness of Joshua Tree. The park, spanning hundreds of thousands of acres, had both well-maintained trails and rugged, isolated areas. Search teams were quickly dispatched, and it didn't take long before they found Aaron's car. But something was off. The vehicle wasn't parked near the main entrance or at any of the designated parking lots typically used by visitors. Instead, it was tucked away in a remote, less traveled area. Tracks around the car revealed an unsettling clue. Aaron had stepped out of the driver's seat, but hadn't headed toward the park's trails. Instead, she had walked directly to another vehicle parked nearby. She got into the passenger seat of that car, which then drove off, its trail disappearing deeper into the desert. The mystery now shifted. Who had Aaron met that day? And where had they gone? The search expanded. Dozens of volunteers joined the effort, along with search dogs, rescue teams, and military helicopters combing the rugged terrain. Yet despite the massive operation, there was no sign of Aaron. As investigators dug deeper, Jonathan's alibi began to hold. Surveillance and witness statements confirmed that he hadn't left the military housing complex between the time Aaron left and when he eventually called the police. With that, suspicions against him were dropped. But soon, a new lead surfaced. Friends revealed that Aaron had been involved in a secret relationship with Christopher Lee, her married neighbor. It wasn't just an affair. There was a chance that Christopher was the father of Aaron's unborn child. This crucial piece of information came from Aislinn, Aaron's closest friend, who had been aware of the affair and its complications. Aislinn also told detectives that Aaron had been planning to leave Jonathan and was hoping Christopher would do the same. But in the weeks leading up to Aaron's disappearance, Christopher had grown distant, avoiding Aaron and showing increasing fear about the pregnancy being exposed. His wife, Nicole, had barely forgiven him for the first betrayal. If she found out Aaron was carrying his child, it would be the end of his marriage for good, and this time, there would be no chance of reconciliation. During the initial interrogations, Christopher tried to downplay his connection to Aaron, insisting they were nothing more than friends. However, when detectives presented him with evidence they had already gathered, he reluctantly admitted to the affair, but claimed it was over. At that point, there wasn't enough concrete evidence to hold him, so he was released. But just a week later, Christopher was arrested on unrelated charges: illegal possession of homemade firearms and explosives. Investigators soon discovered that Christopher had an unhealthy fascination with explosives. He frequently built improvised devices and tested them out in the desert, often tossing them into abandoned mine shafts to watch them detonate. On the morning of June 28th, neighbors noticed Christopher loading a gas canister into his vehicle. While no one thought much of it at the time, since he was known for his desert experiments, he even joked that he was planning another one of his makeshift explosions that day. Though this raised suspicions, investigators still lacked solid evidence linking him directly to Aaron's disappearance. Even when they confirmed that the tire tracks found near Joshua Tree National Park matched the ones from Christopher's car, it wasn't enough to make an arrest for a more serious crime. As part of the ongoing search efforts, authorities had been combing through the countless abandoned mine shafts scattered throughout Joshua Tree. The challenge was immense. Many of these shafts had blended into the landscape, making them hard to locate. After weeks of exhaustive searching with no leads, the decision was made in late August 2014 to officially call off the operation. But then, an unexpected break in the case came. A friend of Christopher's came forward with a set of photos taken in May, just weeks before Aaron's disappearance. In the pictures, Christopher and his friend were seen target shooting in the desert, near one of the old mine shafts. The area was remote and completely deserted, making it an ideal spot for someone who didn't want to be found. Investigators immediately decided to check it out. It wasn't easy, but eventually the search team found the location from the photos. There, deep within the shaft, nearly 150 feet down, they discovered a lifeless body. It took hours of careful work to recover it from the depths, and the advanced state of decomposition made immediate identification impossible. However, the clothing provided a heartbreaking clue. Aaron's family recognized it instantly. Forensic testing later confirmed what everyone feared. The remains were indeed Erin Corwin. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation. A makeshift ligature made from rope had been tightly wound around her neck. After her passing, her body had been thrown into the shaft along with her personal belongings. Inside the shaft, investigators also found a gas canister, the same one neighbors had seen Christopher loading into his car, and a half-empty bottle of Coca-Cola. Interestingly, it appeared that someone had fired shots at the gas canister, likely in an attempt to trigger an explosion. But the canister hadn't detonated. Had it exploded as intended, the shaft could have collapsed, burying all evidence beyond recovery. Forensic experts found Christopher's fingerprints and sweat residue on the rope used in the ligature. In addition, a search of his vehicle uncovered another piece of identical rope. The Coca-Cola bottle found at the crime scene contained DNA from both Erin and Christopher, further tying him to the location. With this mountain of evidence, authorities had everything they needed to move the case forward to trial. Despite Christopher's repeated denials and his refusal to cooperate with investigators, the overwhelming evidence and witness testimonies allowed authorities to piece together the tragic events of that fateful day. It later became clear that the crime wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. It had been planned about a week in advance, right after Erin revealed her pregnancy. With only a short time left before his scheduled move to Alaska, Christopher initially thought he could avoid the situation by cutting ties with Erin and simply moving on. But Erin was determined. She had made up her mind to leave her husband, Jonathan, believing that she and Christopher could start a new life together as a family with their unborn child. But Christopher had no intention of following through on that vision. The thought of Erin revealing the pregnancy to his wife, Nicole, terrified him. He knew it would destroy his marriage for good. Rather than risk exposure, he began meticulously planning Erin's demise. He called Erin, telling her they needed to have an important conversation. Erin, hopeful and still in love, believed he was finally going to commit to her. She even told her friend Aislinn about the upcoming meeting, an innocent detail that would later become a key piece of evidence in court. On the day of the meeting, Erin drove to Joshua Tree National Park, where she transferred into Christopher's vehicle. He took her deep into the desert, heading toward an abandoned mine shaft he was already familiar with. Throughout the drive, he played it cool, chatting with Erin and even offering her a Coke to make her feel at ease. Once they arrived, he suggested they take a walk and talk. Erin had no idea what was coming. As they stepped away from the car, Christopher suddenly pulled out a piece of rope, looped it around Erin's neck, and tightened it until she stopped breathing. He then dragged her lifeless body to the edge of the mine shaft and threw it in, along with all her personal belongings and anything that could be traced back to him. To cover his tracks, he tossed in the gas canister, hoping it would explode and collapse the shaft, destroying all the evidence. But the canister didn't detonate. In a last-ditch effort, Christopher fired multiple shots at it from above, but between the depth of the shaft and the darkness, his aim failed. Throughout the trial, Christopher stuck to his story, claiming he never intended to harm Erin. According to him, the meeting was meant to be a final conversation, to convince her to leave him alone. He argued that Erin became aggressive, threatening to expose the affair and her pregnancy to Nicole if he didn't commit to her. That, he claimed, pushed him over the edge. He further tried to paint Erin as emotionally unstable, saying she was obsessed with his daughter, Liberty, and had even told the little girl she would soon become her new mom. Christopher insisted that he feared Erin's growing attachment and felt he had to protect his family. But the jury wasn't swayed. On November 30th, 2016, Christopher Lee was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder and evidence tampering. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a surprising twist, Nicole Lee, Christopher's wife, testified against him during the trial. She revealed that she had no idea what her husband was capable of and expressed horror at the person she had unknowingly lived with for years. Her testimony was pivotal in solidifying the case against him, ensuring he would never walk free again. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.